Morning, everybody. I basically did not want to stop the music. I just wanted to have a music party with you all today. Thank you all for joining. I see a few of the faces that we had in our session yesterday and some new faces from today. So we're going to kind of do a mixture of shortcuts from stuff that happened yesterday and some other stuff for today. Welcome, Online Generation Code, Day 2. My name's Ilona Kish. I'm the Director of Public Libraries 2030, and you can see my colleague Teen, who's actually in the same room as me, opposite today, moderating the chat. I think we did yesterday do a quick Zoom rules just to remind you. I think Teen has the power to mute you all, but you can unmute yourselves. Is that right? So if you want to speak, you can. We'll bring that in. Please use the chat extensively. We got some really good stuff out of there yesterday. And what I'd like to ask you to do is just write in the chat who you are and where you're from. You know, are you working in a library? Which library? Why are you here? You know, that kind of stuff, because we had a lot of people on yesterday and we realized that they were just, we didn't know who some of them, we just didn't know who was there, and it would have been really nice to be able to share that. If I speak too quickly, then just, make, distress signals in front of the screen. So what we're going to do today in this hour is 2 or 3 things. We had some people yesterday who wanted to present the projects that they are presenting in Generation Code. And I have for the moment noted Biblionet Groningen. I think you're there. You wave to me. Yeah, hi. And then the librarians from Helsingborg. Is that right? In the forest. Yeah, I see you guys. I think we might have space for one more. So if you want to just kind of jump in afterwards, then just put something in the chat and we'll see if we can make time for that. The second thing I want to do is at the end of the session yesterday, I asked the participants what was the one question they would have liked to ask in the session, and we got some really rich content. So I want to talk you through what they were, and there are 3 sort of separate categories, and I just want to kind of throw that out to you and get some kind of feedback from that. I have asked Jeroen de Boer also to join us from Frisk Lab in Friesland. Do you want to wave, Jeroen? Because I can see you. Because some of the questions were about what do we do next? And I think that was quite interesting in terms of the existing forum that there are to talk about what's happening in tech in libraries in a very broad sense. And I really got a feeling over all of the things we did yesterday that we need to think about how we can connect with each other more broadly, more differently, more effectively. So with that, thanks for all of you. I'm really appreciating that you're putting your stuff there in the chat. It really helps us to connect with you. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Biblionet in Groningen. Try and keep it to 5-6 minutes if you can. Just tell us briefly what you're doing. And while you're chatting, I'm going to bring up the page that's on the Generation Code website, okay?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Lona. My name is Jolanda Robbe, and some of my colleagues are here today as well. During the lockdown that happened in the Netherlands, we had a lockdown from, I think it was somewhere in March. We quickly had to come up with ways in which we can transform our services for our patrons, but not only our patrons, but also for our citizens as well. And what happened is that we came up with this a group of 4 people who had a daily meeting, Zoom, WhatsApp. We used all different platforms, and you can all imagine what happens at those kind of meetings, where cats and dogs are walking by, and phones are falling over. I mean, there was a lot of energy at that time. What we had to come up with ways in which we can use online services to continue some of the things that we wanted to do. And not all of those things were new. For instance, what we came up with was a YouTube channel for children, and we already started that in, I think it was the end of 2019. And the reason we did that, because we always consider for children, we're thinking about how we can get sort of a triangle where what are we doing in the school environment, what are we doing within our libraries, and what are we doing at home. And for instance, our reading programs always has a focus on all of these three meanings. So what are we doing, the activities within a library, what are we doing at the schools, but also what we can do at home. So some of our reading programs have digital components as well. So we started this YouTube channel for children a few months before the COVID pandemic started. And we knew how to just use that and bring that more during the pandemic and the lockdown that we had to deal with. At the everyday meetings that we had, we ended up with 4 different programs and activities. The children's activity was one of them. The second thing that is very important within our libraries, we have a branch of 37 libraries, is that we have a place that's called a taalhuis, and that's a place for people, they can work on their reading, writing and digital skills. And it's very important to have that place. 1 in 9 people have difficulty reading and writing in the Netherlands. So it's one of our places that is very important, and we work together with a lot of partners in making sure that people can have those skills. But when you cannot come together and you don't have in-person contacts, how can you make sure that people can always practice their skills? So we came up with the online taalhuis, which is also a YouTube channel where a lot of people work together and made videos for everyday use. So for instance, we could bake cakes and people can participate. And by doing that, we used a lot of language and we could show how that's been done. The third thing that we did is the online reading club. We want not only our patrons, but also our other citizens who loved reading, they could pick up books and we can bring books at home, but we also wanted to start this online community where people can talk about books. And we do that once a month. And during that time, people read the same books, and it's also with the local writers. And afterwards, we have a live stream on Facebook where people can ask questions and can talk to their writers as well. And all of these things that we came up with, we are already thinking about the next steps, even after the pandemic, because like what I said, it's not just about the online services at this time and at this moment, but also how can you use that in the near future? And so we're thinking about how we can connect and make an addition for the online services with the in-person activities within our libraries. And that's for us the next step. And you can see we have a video up there you can watch, and if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. That's really interesting. And I just put in the chat there, it's a really interesting program, the taalhuis program that's running in libraries. And I think that's something that could be an interesting model for other countries as well. I mean, it's kind of unusual thing in the Netherlands. I think that's interesting. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Helsingborg to tell us about their project. Floor's yours. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, so please tell us your names while you're there.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Eva, and for those of you who have seen our video, you have seen me before. And my name is David. Okay, so we wanted to talk to you a little bit about our video, of course, but also I would like to bring up the fact that Sweden is one of the few countries that didn't have a lockdown. And that has affected our library in a different way than it has affected all of you other libraries that actually went on lockdown. So we have kept our library open. There were not that many places that closed down in March, high schools and universities. And we also have other restrictions, of course, like meeting 10 people in a group and that's it. No sport events, no concerts, things like that. And also for our events, that hasn't had an impact. We did a lot of things, as you can see in our video. We have a digital competence center here in Helsingborg, and that is the heart of all of our digital things that we do. And we also have a lot of things to do with kids. Fortunately, the weather was good, so we could move everything out in the park. And we could, because we have activities for kids like 5 to 6 times a week, like days. So we moved it out in the park, and we actually built a little shed that we painted for the kids. We don't show that in the video, I'm sorry about that. I can send you pictures. But that was really a good place to be, because you can use distance while you're outside, and instead of moving it inside. Okay. So we also have, or had, I should say, an extensive outreach program for seniors. We have, what do you call it, senior citizen meeting places run by the city. I think there are about 10.
Something like that.
Something like that. And we had scheduled over almost 300 scheduled skill drop-in times, you could say, during from January to June, and we had to cancel all of them because the senior centers, they closed down. That was something that here in Sweden they decided people that were 70 plus needed to stay at home or be extra vigilant because they were in a risk group. So what do we do then? Suddenly we're not out of a job or out of work, but a lot of things closed down and we had to think differently. So we tried to contact them online in Zoom and in Jitsi Meet, and we tried almost everything. But for us, that didn't work out so well. It was hard for them to understand the new concept. They didn't have the equipment to actually, they had old computers or they had a phone and they didn't really know how to do it. So we had to think of a new way to do interaction when we couldn't actually do it with them here at the library because they were not supposed to be here. So we thought of a new concept called Do You Speak Digital? We haven't presented that in the video actually because it's really new. So we thought about digital words like scrolling, swiping, liking, what is Googling, and what is all of these words, what do they mean? So we actually invited them, and some actually accepted. So we had our first interaction last week, I guess. Yeah, I can't type when I'm talking, sorry. But that's one thing we did. We also kept our digital center open, of course. You could notice in the beginning in March and in April that a lot of people didn't come. So we closed every other computer, and that was fine for a while. Then people started coming back. You had about 180,000 people laid off between March and May in Sweden. Yes. So a lot of them came to us because you could have worked for 30 years and suddenly you were out of a job, and now you need to go to the employment agency online only. No offices you can visit, no people to talk to. You could talk to them on the phone, but you needed to go online, and they didn't know how to do that. So after a while, we had to open up all of our computers again. We spread them out on the area that we have the center on, and we still keep working with them. So we face challenges because normally we interact with them one-on-one, like face-to-face. And when you need to keep a distance for 1.5 to 2 meters, how do you do that? And how is that for privacy reasons for them when you need to speak a little louder and you talk to them and you have private things about bank statements, other things, they apply for grants, whatever. And how do you actually address that? So we have had a lot of conversations between us here at the library, the librarians. We are about 20 that actually works at the digital center. It's staffed all day with at least 2 people. So we're about 20 that does that. So we have had other challenges, I would say, but still challenges. Do you need to add something?
No, I think that's...
Okay, so that's about it, I think. Thank you. Yeah, well, it's how does your Speak digital work? Well, this summer we made some short films, short videos for Instagram, and every video had 3 words that we tried to explain. So we start by showing one of those, and then we discuss it with the people online. What do they know about the word? Can they explain it? What does it mean to them? And if you take like, for instance, like differs from different social media, and you can also think and talk about what does it mean when you like something. Do you want to share? What does that mean? Do you click on something? Do you just share something without reading it first? So you can talk about
a discussion about how you use social media.
Yeah, media and information literacy comes really into an aspect here that you can discuss and talk about. So
okay, keep on putting stuff in the chat. And I've just sort of been writing some stuff down now. I don't know if many of you are in the same place that we're in. Certainly one of the things we're thinking about is 3-year plans, 5-year plans, what's happening in, you know, and I guess because it's 2020, it was kind of obvious year to do that. And now it's even more obvious in terms of the way that the world has changed so much. And I think this group of people is a really special group of people, some of you we've been working with for years, and some of you new. I had the pleasure of speaking, I think it was with your director a few days ago, Katarina.
Katarina, yes, she mentioned.
Yeah, and just, you know, sort of having a conversation about how we can continue to find library practitioners and library professionals across Europe who are really thinking in an inventive, open, thoughtful, political and European way. So more than just what's happening to me and in my library, but how does that connect really, really broadly? And I think that's what I'd like to take the conversation into. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share some of the thoughts from yesterday, and I just want to check that you can see this. Getting more good at this. PowerPoint. Okay. So you can see that? Yeah. Questions from day one. So they fell into 3 broad categories. And I think what I'd like to do is just I picked out the ones that sort of jumped out at me. And then if you can use the chat to put some questions in, and then Tine will wave at me, and then we'll pick up a couple for conversation. So the first group of questions for me were sort of questions about library process. And it was interesting to sort of see these things around. And I think these are sort of very much COVID specific for this year. This came out in some of our internal conversations as well. You know, so where and how could libraries across Europe collect some real sort of deep process learnings from this year is how I kind of summarize all of this. I think that, you know, that first question is quite interesting, is that we know that when there's a crisis or something really extreme, we'll do things that are maybe not sustainable. And we learn from, you know, doing things in an emergency situation, running around. I don't know if anybody wants to raise a hand and say something, then please do that either digitally or by waving at the screen. I can't see everybody, but Tine can. If you want to put something in the chat, Rafael, I see you. Can other people, Lana, get a list of people who want to speak? Anybody else? You have to put it in the chat. Just hold on. Can they not raise their hands? Yeah? Can they not digitally raise their hands? Yeah, so I think, there's a thing in the corner in Zoom where you can put a little digital thing if you want to speak. So I think this goes to some specific responses. Are there things that really didn't work or not work? And you can put those in the chat. I think what's also interesting is to ask what other questions like this might we want to address in a future conversation? Are these the right questions to be asking ourselves? For example, Hannah Laura from Cologne, who we work with a lot, had really noticed how this experience has moved a lot of her library professionals into being creators of content in a way that they weren't before. And I thought that was a really interesting observation. So the question is how to sustain that when the need for that, people's roles have grown and expanded in really unusual ways. So I'm going to leave you thinking about that. I'm going to pass to Raphael, and if anybody else wants to speak, then let me know. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm from France, and I'm working on a project named Placed with different libraries, and like Aarhus, Dokken at Aarhus, one library of Göteborg, and the Public Library of Lyon. And about the impact on library process and be forced by circumstances. I want to say that our project was supposed to be experimented in March to May, and we were closed. The library was closed. So we had to think differently. And now we are going to do the experimentation of our project, and I will explain then after that what is it. And the way the people are coming into the library in this moment is changing our project, because our project is basically some digital tablets, okay? You can touch it, all right? And you can have information and documentation produced by librarians, by partners, or by the public about an event that the library is organizing. But in this moment, nobody wants to touch everything. You don't want to touch a tablet screen or something like that. So we are maybe changing our project. It's not the point to give access to people to large screen so people can touch it and navigate on that and having their own parkour like this, or like a promenade. But we are thinking that maybe it's a tool for the librarians to do a different kind of mediation. And maybe we have to change. I don't know if it's sustainable, but it's a kind of resilience. We are adapting our practice to fit to the new way to use the library and the tools, and specifically the digital tools that we were inventing for the people. But maybe it's not bad thing, because we were really thinking these tools like a tool that people can use with a lot of autonomy. But now we are more thinking the tools like something that we are using when we are in a relation with the public. And maybe it's interesting for us to think differently. I don't think it's a bad thing, in fact. That was just what I want to say now. To begin something.
Right, I'm unmuted. There we go. I fucking hate technology. Oh, it's just very stressful. Thank you so much, Raphael. As you were talking, I was just kind of, it's going to speak very much to the third topic here. It's like, I'd love to be able to collect all of these examples somehow, and this real lived experience from this moment of what's worked, what hasn't worked. I love that phrase, kill darlings, things that you just thought were fantastic and that were just going to be amazing and didn't work at all, because, I know it's a banality, but we know that we learn so much more from what fails sometimes than what succeeds. I think that's a harder one to share in the chat. I want to jump to the second question. Sorry, let me see. Has he got a thing?
Yeah. So I think Donatas and Adriana, you wanted to say something in regards to that. So go ahead and unmute and make your comment.
You're unmuted.
Yeah. So we just I was chatting with Adriana that the biggest struggle for us and probably for the other libraries was not lack of creativity, but actually lack of really basic skills how to build online communities. Because when you are working with services that when you are working face to face with the humans, and when you have to jump immediately to the digital space, so that was scary. Actually, we didn't know how to act. We just were experimenting.
Yeah. I think we were not scared of our own abilities to present a content, rather than how to find and how to reach out for those people who actually came in person into our library. So there was no database, no like contact information. So, and then if we were able to have this community, probably we would still be able to sustain it and not be afraid of maybe another lockdown or something like that. So
yeah. I mean, I think for us, we were just talking about it before the session starts. It looks like Brussels and maybe Belgium is heading for another lockdown. And I think if we think about where we were in March versus now, and readiness or not, or all of the uncertainties that we're facing going forwards, I think that there's a question about the sort of long-term strategic thinking of really how digital and the library space are going to go forward as we move forward. It's more than what's digital that's happening in the library. Donatas, and did you find experts that could help you with that? With their knowledge, because I wouldn't expect that to be in the library. And how do you find the people that help you do that? And without it just having to be Facebook, for example.
At that moment, everything was going so fast that it was impossible. You have to do something, not learn something. So, for a moment, but still, we have thoughts how to and need to learn how to do that. Probably we will search for the help. But still, I think we librarians can be creative at a very high level, but they still have to have some basics. So we lack those basics, and probably we'll try to find
resources.
Solutions.
Yeah, and I see that from Maya talking about, when we first started this project, the head of communications in the host organization at the time said, "Who is your competition?" And we kind of went, "Oh no, we don't have any competition because we provide something like really, really unique." But now it's like really, as libraries have expanded the way they operate, offering coffee maybe, or, offering other things, of course, then we're moving into other competitive zones. I'm also thinking, I mean, it's another question about, I mentioned what had come up earlier in the year, this question about not replicating online what happens in the library, but developing the capacity to use the digital space really, really differently, and thinking about how that's complementary. In some of our earlier sessions, I think that might have happened in some of the Frisk Lab sessions actually, Jeroen, that some librarian, there was a real question about losing footfall and physical presence to digital, and that if libraries invested a lot in providing services online that were comparable, when the libraries opened again, people wouldn't come back. And I think that understanding that kind of fear and relationship between those two things is really, really interesting. I'm going to hold these questions because I think they're going to come back in the third piece of the conversation. I've put up the second slide there. Can you still see that on the screen sharing? Yeah. I'd like to maybe have some people just type some other responses in the chat to this one. Jeroen's just asking about what the main reason is to use Mastodon, for example. For me, these sort of fell into a question about, very sort of specific technical tools. You mentioned Jitsi earlier. I think Jeroen, you were the one that introduced me to Jitsi first. I'm not a technical expert in, alternative platforms. And again, I think that speaks to this, something that came up we had a session yesterday with a technical guy from our library here, and it was really clear how little resources he was able to connect with outside of his own library in terms of what's available, what works, what's free. Maya, we talked a little bit yesterday about the very, very small budget that you had to work with. And then, we'd talked to a big library who'd spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on new toys and computational thinking kits and stuff like that. And that's not a resource that's often available to libraries, have lots and lots of money to spend on various tools. So if people have any comments, on any of the specifics that came up yesterday, I see Giovanna, you raised your hand. Go ahead, take the floor. Can he?
Okay. We tested so many tools from an Hangout to Jitsi to so many, but we discovered really fast that we had to rethink all our digital and web communication, because there was no more word of mouth, and we did information, not communication. So it was strange, but we did, and sad in part, but we discovered how many things about our digital services people, they just did not know, So we were running about coding online and doing and I did also 3D printing and 3D designing online. And we discovered that we have to step back also to do some really basic information. Our managing director, for example, he asked us, we thought, this is a strange thing, a phone marketing campaign, something like in the late 80s, and it worked, because the people was really over about screens, no more screen, no more smartphone, and they were really happy to hear us on the phone and interviewing them and making questions about how to do things, and maybe taking an online date on GoToMeeting. But this was a second step. We first just talked to them. And we started at first really energetic about coding online and many things. But with time, we discovered that sometimes it's better not to do something if the quality of the interaction is too low. So, for example, we discovered that with smart kids, it's better to jump on cloud developing. So they are happy to see you, but they have their project, and they will share code with you, with Git or with on the Scratch platform online. But if you use Scratch online or Running Out or something like this only for basic coding, the quality is really not the best for the most of the kids, So maybe it's better to do coding and exploring the computational thinking in a different way. Maybe pushing on digital storytelling or on projects they can do and share. So we discovered that maybe moving all online is not always the best.
No.
Just this. No. Because at first we struggled just to push all the things online. But we really started also the online courses, and the people are different. So we discovered that we were losing people, the people that want online courses. So we will have two kinds of patrons, the online one and the in-person one, asking different things.
Exactly. I would see it, you know, that let's assume that at some point in the future the physical libraries will be back to normal operations. So maybe one of the questions is, how do we retain the new audience that we found and the new capabilities that we've acquired? I'm going to jump to the third group of questions, and this is the one I really want to dig into a little bit, which is about what we do next as a community of digital and progressive librarians. And I think that this has been a really interesting experience to do Generation Code online. Some of you have participated in the physical event in the past, which of course is necessarily limited. And it's been sometimes even more limited because we've done it within the European Parliament for political and advocacy reasons. So there's access challenges and stuff like that. And I think what I have felt over the conversations we've had over the last day is what a massive need there can be for sharing of resources, sharing of knowledge, sharing of skills. There's been so many times in the last 24 hours that I've heard people talking about things and I thought, I know exactly the person that could help you with this. Mostly it's you, Jeroen, that I want to send a lot of people to. You know, but there's so much knowledge out there. There's so much different experiences. And of course, you know, that's part of PL 2030's goal is to be able to be a connector. And so I think it was you guys in Vilnius yesterday, you were the ones who were saying, what about an online platform to inspire and share? You know, and part of me went, yes, and part of me went, oh no. You know, because I think we've all had experiences of trying to put those things up that then don't live or, you know, are not engaged in. So I kind of wanted to ask you, Jeroen, just for a few thoughts on that, because my feeling is you've been involved in two projects that I'm aware of that, you know, speak to this. One is Internet Librarian, which is an annual project, is an annual conference that's in London. It's not the sexy Monterey, California one, which I still haven't been invited to my great disappointment. And the second thing is starting a Makerspace network and working on that. And I'm just sort of thinking about what demand opportunity there could be in this moment to think about organizing a resource sharing forum that's focused on the digital aspects of librarianship, both COVID related and long term. I mean, mostly long term, obviously. So what do you think?
First of all, hello everybody. Ilona asked me to join in, so here I am, and now I am requested to answer some questions. I think, first of all, it's very important to look for a platform that's already embraced by a lot of colleagues in Europe. We have experiences in the Netherlands with setting up a specific library network, and that works really well, but it took a lot of time, years, to get this started and to get colleagues to move from one platform to the other. So I'm all in for new platforms. So for instance, Mastodon, yeah, that's great, but there's also a very high threshold for people to start using that. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to find a balance between finding the right platform in terms of not too difficult, preferably open source, privacy friendly, so elements that are important for libraries. And on the other hand, very easy to use, so preferably something that people already know. And I think it would be great to put together.
Do you think there's a need for it? Am I feeling it right? Is
Well,
that you?
There are, for instance, some large LinkedIn groups with librarians, so you could start there. But I think it would be very helpful also if, for instance, all of us start to put together a list just in an online form to get to know what people are actually using. And then select the best option or the best alternative next to the platforms that you are already using and that you don't want to part with. Because I think that's also important. This is not a question about moving people from one platform to the other. I think these times really show that we are able to work on multiple platforms and with multiple tools and gadgets and apps. So in that sense, this time is really great, also for us as professionals. But if we could put together a list with preferred platforms and also elaborate a little bit on why you use this, what are the pros and cons, is that we then have some kind of shared philosophy of what's important, and then start thinking about, okay, how can we make this a success?
Could we take a step back, in the sense of, I think I'm thinking of something very broad here, and just thinking, I think you guys who know me, there's no interest in starting something that's being done better somewhere else. That's very, very clear. But I feel that we have, in the 5 years we've been doing Generation Code, we've started to build up quite a community or a tribe of librarians that are thinking and working in a particular way. And I'm feeling that and seeing that. And I just want to think about all of the questions and the topics that we've covered over the past few years, which is around platforms, which is around tools, it's around products, it's around resources, around strategies, it's around skills, it's around the political implications. It could be around things like, we're going to discuss this later today, both in terms of EU programs. What does the Digital Education Action Plan offer in terms of future funding opportunities over the next few years? What will the COVID recovery budgets translate into at national level? And how can libraries take advantage of that, particularly since the questions around digital engagement have become paramount over this year, in a way that people were kind of a bit, yeah, we know it's important, but we've kind of done that a few years ago. The kind of conversation has just changed so much. And whether we as PL 2030, in the unique position that we have in Europe, might be able to bring this group together and do something, really interesting. So the question is, would you guys be interested in working with us to set up, like, let's say we think about what we do next year for Generation Code. Is once a year enough? Where else are you going to get this stuff? How could we do it that it might eventually be in person, but also accompanied by a really rich online resource tool that we could really share with each other? And is that, maybe something we could do, or we could start off where, you would bring in the Makerspace staff, you bring in all of these questions into a kind of European, digital excellence thing. So that's kind of, I'm just going to let that sit with you. I know Raphael wanted to speak. If anybody else wants to speak versus putting stuff in the chat, then just raise your hand one way or another. And I hand over to you, Raphael, to jump in. And then I see Andrea down there for sure. I'm going to note anybody else who shouts. Okay, Raphael, you.
Okay, so maybe I'm just a step behind, I don't know, but I understand the need to join and to discuss between librarians and so on and find a good way to do that. But my point is that I'm already part in a lot of organizations where we are talking the same thing in French or in English or in German or also. And I have to say that Public Libraries 2030 is for me very interesting as a lobby actor. And when I was coming to Generation Code, what I want is meeting the maps. That's my point. Yeah. And I'm very happy to meet the other librarians. And guys, I'm very happy to meet you here or there. But my point is to meet the maps, really. Mm-hmm. It's a port, it's a door to enter in there. And I don't know if we meet online between librarians, that's great, but it doesn't change my life and the way for me to do advocacy with maps. And there is something, for me, it's not the question where we can meet as librarian, because we have plenty of occasion, in fact. My point is how this meeting with a lot of librarians from all Europe are going to have an impact of the representation the maps have about libraries. And that's the point. And I think it's we have to keep that in mind, because we don't need place to meet together. We need place to do advocacy. Okay. So for me, the point is not what tools are good for librarians, but what are the better tools to speak with the maps. Okay. And I have not the answer. You are better in this question than me, but my point is I want to meet them. Okay. You too also.
I'm gonna speak to that really, really quickly because I think that we started Generation Code because it was during EU Code Week. And we had this idea that it was an interesting vehicle to engage with MEPs around. And so obviously, you know, we've been started to put up some MEP interviews on the site, and that's been great. But obviously in a digital format, that MEP contact piece has been very, very difficult to preserve in the digital thing. So in terms of our role in advocacy, there's many other ways and reasons that and opportunities that we could create to meet with MEPs. We've done breakfast meetings, you know, and I think that there's a community that really wants to act with that. So I think the question here is, and I personally agree with you that there are many different fora in which librarians and libraries can meet each other, and some are more or less useful than others, and some have to be local and language specific. I think the question here for me, for the other people, is in terms of the digital challenges that we're facing, looking going forward in terms of technology. I love that question about, you know, better internet. You know, there's so many angles that we could be looking at from digital practice and process and policy. And for us as PL 2030, that's always going to translate into advocacy. So I know Andrea wanted to speak, and then if anybody else jump in.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, we've been talking in the chat about what sort of product to use or which is best. But I think, so the one thing that we're doing at Setup right now, which is a media lab that is included in the library of Utrecht in the Netherlands, we're really trying to tell people, like, you're not just a user of some specific medium. You can also say something about how you think it works or how it doesn't work for you. And what I see a lot is that people just think that they're powerless against these big tech companies that just have all the users, like WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever. But if you say, I would like to change something in these media so that they support my goal more, that is so relevant. And I think we should make, you know, ourselves that kind of user. Let's say more about how we would like the technologies to be shaped towards what we think is appropriate. Yeah.
What you make me think about is, you know, let's say on a European level, and where we could do something as a group, and PL 2030 could work with you guys, is I think the question is, do we need a some sort of shared narrative around libraries and digital now? You know, how do we talk about it? You know, again, thinking about the head of digital at New York Public Library, he's very funny. He said his job title is digital officer or something like that. And he said he thinks about it in terms of being a fireman. You know, his job is, you know, it's like not to put out, its job is to put out fires, not put digital everywhere. You know, and sort of thinking about the future that we're facing and what role libraries are going to play in that, thinking about how we talk about what we do with digital, what values we embrace. I think every session we had yesterday, the question of the new Netflix documentary Social Dilemma came up. And, you know, there's a kind of moment happening when people are kind of understanding in a deeper and more societal way what the impact is of the technologies, you know, and I feel that there's a general statement for me about the role of libraries being a place where people make sense of the world, and that you know is especially important in this area right now. And you know, so I know that many libraries are struggling to understand it for ourselves, and we as human, you know, as individuals, of course. But what I'm experiencing is that there are librarians, and you are them, who are really at the head of this. And that goes back to the advocacy question always, is that we want to find spaces where we show policymakers and funders that it's the librarians that are getting understanding of this, and it's the librarians that are interacting with the citizens on this and helping the citizens make sense and make value connections. And in the longer term that happens because it's a physical space as well as a virtual space, and physical spaces are shrinking, as you know, I mean, in just blah blah blah, you know.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you say this, that you'd like to stand for this as well as a community of librarians. It's very interesting. The product that at Setup that we're working on right now is to sort of make a stage for people to do this actually. And we're trying to get a top level domain, which is .sorry. So instead of .nl or .com, you have .sorry, and then we want to get as many people active on that top level domain.
Okay. What does SORI stand for?
Sorry?
SORI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Share it here.
Okay, cool.
Sorry. .sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I would love to get Corey. I mean, I guess the question is, if there isn't a space where this is happening at European or international level in a, you know, and then I'm just totally with Raphael. I think it's something we've really learned this year is where are the conversations, where are the groups, and where are the tribes that meet our needs and that we speak to and that we want to be involved in? Which ones do we have to do even though they're boring and irritating, and which ones really feed our work and our souls and our imaginations? You know, and I've absolutely no desire to set up something that exists somewhere else and that works better. But if there's something, even if it's this community, you know, even, I mean, I think we'll carry on doing Generation Code in some format one way or another, or maybe the Generation Code community migrates to something that's maybe a bit more competitive to Internet Librarian in terms of a European tech forum, and that the MEP lobbying and advocacy piece becomes something different or happens at a different point in the year, or, you know, I don't know, we can think about all of those things together. Okay. I know I've thrown a lot of questions out there. I know there's a lot of people, those of you who know me know that that's some of the way, you know, I like to kind of think things over a little bit with everybody. Can we use the last 2 or 3 minutes, just like throw in some next step suggestions on the chat for me? What would you like us to do? What would you want to do yourself? I can set up a mailing list. I can get back to you all individually. I don't know everybody who's here. but you can find us really easily. So if you want to send me or Teen a message and just say, I was there, I'd want to do something, you know, even if there's 5 or 10 of us that want to do something, we'll have time now to host some conversations. And I'm thinking really specifically about the tech digital question here, you know, the lobbying advocacy thing, you know, we've got to get back to that in a different way. I want to see a French MEP up there, Raphael. I know they're so easy. Okay. Is Internet Librarian, did it happen this year, for example? We could do, for example, a massive libraries and tech fair, you know, in Brussels, outside of the Parliament, so we're not restricted by space. And, you know, all of the access issues that we have in the Parliament is a nightmare. I'm not sure I want to get into the exhibition conference game, but we could, if it would be useful. Nobody's traveling in January from the States, Eric. I don't think anybody's traveling for another 6 months. Yeah, virtually, yeah. But maybe we set up a private conversation with him anyway, Corey. So I'm typing, I don't know why I'm typing because I can talk. Yeah, Anna's right. Getting MEPs into, you know, the kind of, that's a long-term investment.
It took me, I think, around 2 or 3, no, maybe 4 or 5 years until I finally got an MEP who wanted to visit our library, because they stick to their own region, and we have the circumstance that within our region is Amsterdam for a lot of MEPs. So a lot of MEPs from the Netherlands come from Amsterdam, and they don't want to go to Alkmaar, which is a far better city. I think the connection was broken.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah,
for the moment, that was really scary. Oh my God.
Okay. So anything north of Amsterdam, you see?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have a protocol for getting MEPs into libraries, and that's an ongoing, long-term goal for us. And it is absolutely the #1 thing you can do. If you can get somebody into your library, it makes a huge amount of difference. And if you want help with that, you can always help. And, you know, with each parliamentary mandate, you know, there are new MEPs, you've got to figure out which ones are interested and going to be useful and not a waste of your or their time, etc. So listen, I'm going to close out and just say thank you all so much for participating so actively. I've really appreciated it. Please do not hesitate to send in thoughts and questions, follow-ups, all of that kind of thing. I also would love to see you guys later today, particularly for the session we have with our chair of the MEP Library Lovers, Brando Benefei. He's great. And I think this is also a place to ask questions to him and say, how do we engage with it? How do we engage with you guys? What's going to make you interested? What can you do for us? You know, and put him on the spot a little bit in terms of understanding what the library sector can achieve in the European Parliament over the next, I mean, we're going to be nice to him, obviously, because he's lovely and he's supportive and helpful, but, you know, he's also young, he's dynamic, and he's really willing to engage in a real conversation with us. And I think it's important that we show him that we're present and we want something. That's what they're looking for. We'll see you later on today if you can. Thank you all so much. And please do email us with more thoughts. Take care, everybody.